إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وخليله وصفيه وأمينه على وحيه ومصطفاه من خلقه بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح لهذه الأمة الكريمة الشريفة وجاهد في الله تعالى حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين فترك أمته على مثل البيضاء ليلها ونهارها سواء لا يزيغ عنها إلا من هو هالك صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد فيقول الإمام أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل البخاري رحمه الله في كتابه الجامع الصحيح حدثنا علي بن عبد الله قال حدثنا سفيان عن أبي الزناد عن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه وأرضاه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الله تعالى عددت لعبادي الصالحين ما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت ولا خطر على قلب بشر قال أبو هريرة اقرأوا إن شئتم فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون والحديث رواه مسلم. Today's sermon is something that affects many of us. Some of us more than others. Specifically and especially during this time. And it is a phenomenon, something which is paranormal or normal. Many of us know of it. You have a family member, a friend, and it has an effect and an impact on you, yourself, your relationship concerning your wife, your husband, your work, your profession, your career, your health, and of course, most dangerously, your faith, your iman. And it is a condition which is summarized in an acronym, 3 letters, SAD, which is obviously SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And some call it seasonal depression. I don't wear no white coats or jackets. I don't have no PhD. I don't speak Latin. I'm not into the medical terminology. We call it simply winter blues, in which all of a sudden I feel more lethargic when it's cold outside. And I want to sleep more. And I want to eat more. And it's harder to get out of the bed. And my mood is very low. I feel blue. I feel sad. I feel down. Rather, when it gets colder and the days start getting really, really, really short, by time it's dhuhr, before you know it, you blink, and it's asr, just like that. Not like in the summertime, asr, 5 o'clock, 5:30. You have all day to pray. Working, traveling, you overslept. But the wintertime, you go to school, you go to work, you're driving in traffic, New York City traffic, you know before you know it, it's asr. And before you know it, it's nighttime. And it's dark, pitch black dark. And the stores are still open. People are walking down the street, and it's dark outside. So there's less sunlight. There's more nighttime, more darkness. Things are shorter, closer, so on and so forth. So I feel depressed. I feel down. And that has, of course, a negative impact upon my well-being. The greatest and the most dangerous impact, of course, is the spiritual well-being. And what is the connection and the relation between depression and one's spirituality? And of course, my mind, my mental isn't there 100%. I'm a little sluggish. I have a lot of fog. I'm not as romantic or friendly or welcoming because I'm depressed. And the only reason why I'm depressed is because it's cold outside. And of course, my eating habits, my health, I gain weight. My waist size goes up in the winter. I put on a little extra, couple of layers. And I eat a lot of junk food, tons of carbs. And I find myself binging to fight off this yucky, icky feeling on the inside. So many people, they suffer from SAD, from seasonal affective disorder, more women than men. Studies show 4 times the chance of a woman being affected by wintertime depression than a man. So is it actual depression or is it a lower level of depression? Specialists, therapists, psychologists, people who specialize in this field, they differ on what is actually classified as. But I know I feel a little sad to see the summer go, to see the fall go. And it's cold outside, so on and so forth. So what does Islam teach us about depression and about sadness and about the blues? Whatever type of blues that you suffer from. What is the proper Islamic understanding of fighting this feeling of being low and down and out for no other reason except for the change of the season? Let us reflect on what Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu tells us. That the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said that Allah, the exalted, the glorified, the true King, he said, for my righteous servants, I've prepared something which those righteous servants can't fathom. That's the interpretation of the hadith. مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمِعَتْ وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. No human eye has seen, no human ear has even heard of. I've heard the stories. I've never been there to that country, but I've heard about it. People have told me, people who went, they told me about it. I dream of going to Mecca, but I've never been there myself, but I heard the stories. I saw the people come back changed and affected. So therefore, that's my dream place. That's where I want to go. No human eye has ever seen this place. No human ear has ever heard of this place. And no human heart, no human mind has thought of, has fathomed what Jannah is. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he asks some of his servants, they aren't humans, they're angels, malaika. How have you left my servants? What are my servants doing? They're asking you for Jannah and they're seeking your protection from hell. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, he asked the angels, did they see paradise? Have they ever seen it before? Have they ever seen the hellfire that is living and breathing as we speak? Have they seen it? Yet and still, they desire it and they fear it. What would their du'as be like if they saw Jannah? How greedy would they be in their supplications if they actually saw it for a quick moment? And how terrified would they be if they saw the fire of hell? Yet and still, they invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no human being can fathom what I have prepared for my righteous servants. And from that, brothers and sisters in Al-Islam, is a life in which there is no end, no death. And from that, my dear brothers and sisters in Al-Islam, is a life in which there is no sadness and no depression. The wealthiest from amongst us is going to get sad every now and then, at best. Let alone, he's taking pills, drinking and smoking, fornicating, and all other haram things just to fight the sadness and to numb the pain and the trauma that took place when I was a child. Even though I have everything that you can imagine at my fingertips, it's going to be sad. And the poor, pious person, no matter how pious he is and how content he is with his lot in life, is going to come a time in which he's going to experience what? Some sadness. You have a lot of possessions today. How did you feel before you got those possessions? When you have those possessions, you're worried and afraid of someone what? Taking it away from you. And when it's taken away from you, how do you feel? Obviously. So sadness and the human being's life go hand in hand. So just stop and imagine a place, a life in which you wake up. Obviously, you wake up from sleep. In Jannah, there's no sleep. In paradise, there's no old age. In paradise, there's no aging. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us, Hadith Qudsi, which is in Bukhari and Muslim, for my righteous servants, I've prepared that which can't be imagined, that which cannot be fathomed. And from that is one of the greatest joys of Jannah. And the people of paradise, they will declare, Alhamdulillahi alladhi adhaba anna al-hazan. All praises for Allah, who took the sadness away from us. So sadness is a reality. The fork in the road is now, do righteous pious, knowledgeable, practicing Muslims suffer from depression. When I feel down and out, I feel depressed in the wintertime or in another season, is it because my faith is low and bad and poor? Or are there other reasons and other factors? What is the cure for sadness? What is the prevention for sadness? Read the Quran, study the deen, make tawbah, make dua. And of course, the person is going to say, it's more than that. I do pray, but I still feel depressed and I still feel sad. So many people, they fight and they differ from the Islamic perspective we're speaking, let alone outside of Islam from a spiritual perspective. Can strong, pure spirituality live and coexist with chronic depression? Or if a person is suffering from chronic depression, it's a must that their iman have some holes, some puncture holes, has some wounds. Your iman is suffering somehow, some way, whether you realize it or not. We're not here to answer this question or to discuss this in detail, but I am here to get you to think about if and when you become sad. How often do you become sad and depressed? And how much do you submit to your sadness and your depression? And what do you do to combat it and to fight it? And why all of a sudden, because I'm wearing thicker layers, it isn't as sunny outside, I feel sad? Is it from shaitan? Does the shaitan come out in the wintertime more than the summer, more than the fall, more than the spring? Or is it something deeper than that? Think about the answer to this question or the answer to these questions yourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove sadness from us in this world, in the grave, and in the hereafter. Alhamdulillah wa kafa. وصلاة الله وسلامه على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. قال الشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله تعالى: وقد يقترن بالحزن ما يثاب صاحبه عليه ويحمد عليه فيكون محمودا من تلك الجهة لا من جهة الحزن كالحزين على مصيبة في دينه وعلى مصائب المسلمين عموما فهذا يثاب عليه لما في قلبه أو فهذا يثاب على ما في قلبه من حب الخير وبغض الشر وتوابع ذلك أو كما قال رحمه الله تعالى. Question is sadness, depression, is it a bad thing by itself? لذاته. Not the chronic depression that leads you to do haram or the depression that leads you to do good deeds, but just being sad in itself. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a negative thing or a positive thing? The emotion itself. Anger. Is it a good thing or a bad thing by itself? Not what the anger causes you to do. Lust, fear, hope, yearning, longing. Is a Muslim rewarded or punished just for his emotions? That's the question. And in order to get to the great mystery, we need to discuss this one point. What is the reward and or punishment for just having an emotion? And that emotion, what type of emotion is it? Waxing or waning? Fluttering, does it come, does it go, or does it stay? Last but not least, is it possible and is it feasible for a person to have a constant, persistent emotion in his mind and heart and it not be manifested in his physical actions? Think about that. Can you be chronically sad and it have no effect upon your deeds? Can you always be in a good mood and a happy, joyful, glary mood and it not have no effect upon your hands, your feet, your tongue? Is that even feasible? So in order to answer those questions, we have to be realistic. Because there are Muslims who say, there's nothing wrong with you being sad and depressed. It doesn't mean that you're a bad Muslim. It doesn't mean that you have bad faith. It's just a clinical reason. It's hormones. They're chemicals within your body which cause you to feel up and to feel down. And from that is the lack of sunlight in the wintertime. You have a vitamin D deficiency. From that is the circadian rhythm. And the list goes on and on and on of medical, clinical things, which may be true. But is it possible for a Muslim to wallow in mud? Yes or no? Can a Muslim wallow in mud? Can you become one with your sadness and depression and accept it and not fight it and not go against it? And if you can just sit there and lounge and lurch in it, what is it going to do when it's time to pray? As I said, in the wintertime, prayer comes in and out very quickly. So if I'm lethargic and lazy on the sofa, eating junk food, scrolling, watching the TV, scrolling through TikTok, when am I going to get up and pray? Of course you're not going to pray. You're going to miss Dhuhr. And Asr is going to come in and it's going to go out. Maghrib is going to come in and it's going to go out. Isha is going to come in and it's going to go out. And guess what? You're going to wake up the next day and you're going to be even what? Sadder and more depressed. So therefore, much can be said concerning depression from the Islamic prism, from the spiritual perspective. How does the Muslim prevent it? How do I prevent myself from becoming sad and lounging out in blue? Number two, when I do become sad, because it's inevitable, it's eventual, as we said, how do I rid myself of it? And at worst, how do I just minimize it? I can't shake it off right now, but how do I tone it down? Which will allow me to go to work, which will allow me to be a good husband, which will allow me to be a good mother, which will allow me to do my responsibilities and my duties, to keep my professionalism. I'm not feeling well today, but I'm still in the office. A customer comes in, a client comes in, I have to deal with them professionally. Or do I allow my inner emotions and feelings to cause me to behave in an unprofessional manner? Hence, we have problems within business. Last but not least, how does the Muslim finally rid himself of the sadness and of the depression? So first and foremost is depression in general, let alone depression in the wintertime. It doesn't have one cause and it doesn't have one reason. And if you only want to make one cure, then you're going to limit your options. There is, of course, the spiritual aspect. There's the mental aspect. There's the physical aspect. And of course, what you eat, what you drink, what you put in your body, and what leaves your body, it has an effect upon your mood, good or bad. So first and foremost is gratefulness. Appreciating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favors and blessings. And how the shaitan, from the spiritual aspect, he narrows you into one small, tiny corner. And that's the sadness of the cold, the darkness, short days, long nights, so on and so forth. But when it was hot, you complained about it being what? It was hot. I was sweating. I wear hijab. My back was sweating. When it's hot, you complained about long days. Ramadan in the summertime, how many hours are you fasting? How humid is it outside? How many mosquitoes are there? In the springtime, how many of us suffer from allergies, in which my nose is burning, my eyes are burning, I don't feel well, I'm taking a bunch of pills because of my allergies. And when the fall comes, and the list goes on and on and on, so just think about how many blessings are in the wintertime. And think about how much you owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it was sunny outside. Have you thanked Allah for those blessings? Have you fulfilled your list of appreciation for the past 2 seasons? For you to focus on one season and how it is so bad. And this, from this one aspect, it goes to show that chronic sadness and depression and low iman, poor iman are inseparable. And that is because one of the main types of fuel is you not thanking and appreciating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. So if you have days to make up from Ramadan because you are breastfeeding or pregnant or traveling, when is the best time to make up those days? Of course, in the wintertime. If a person has sleeping problems, what's the best time to get good quality sleep and get good quality rest? To have a successful spring and a successful summer, you need to train, work, diet, tan, in what season? In the wintertime. So the Muslim must realize is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ibadah. You're to reflect, you're to be grateful, and you're to be appreciative to Allah throughout all 4 seasons. And never ever just one season. There's so many different problems with the summer for a Muslim. And there's so many different challenges for the Muslim in the springtime. And there are challenges for the Muslim when autumn comes. So be appreciative to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's first and foremost. Number 2, haste. Short-sightedness. And the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he tells his companion, إِنَّ فِيكَ خَصْلَتَيْنِ يُحِبُّهُمُ اللَّهُ الْحِلْمُ وَالْأَنَاةُ. He says there are 2 things about you that Allah loves. The first is al-hilm. You have thick skin, you're tolerant, you're forbearant. You don't give up and quit easily and get aggravated and rattled easily. And secondly, you're patient. You take your time. How long will the winter last? Forever? No matter how cold, how dark, a time must come in which the snows will melt and the sunshine will come back. So sabr and yaqeen. Patience upon the situation and certainty is that the relief of Allah, me feeling better, things getting better, has to be what? Right around the corner. And of course the shaitan isn't going to tell you to be patient. He's not going to tell you to have certainty, nor is your nafs. And subhanAllah, when we talk about the science behind depression and the science behind wintertime depression, one of the most common means of treating sad is that which is called light therapy or phototherapy, in which you sit in front of a light, in which the creator of this light, he tries to provide enough lumens, he mimics the actual natural sunlight. And you, for 30 minutes or an hour out the day, they say that you are supposed to sit in front of this light. And it's going to help you with the chemical imbalance of lack of sunlight. What is the status, the importance, what is the significance of light in the life of the Muslim? Nur. From all aspects and meaning of the word nur versus darkness. Actual light and darkness, spiritual darkness, mental darkness, navigating through darkness, and you having the fitna of not being able to distinguish and differentiate between light and dark. You can't navigate properly. So let's go back to the initial question. Is sadness a bad thing or a good thing in and by itself? Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَقَدْ يَقْتَرِنُ بِالْحُزْنِ مَا يُثَابُ صَاحِبُهُ عَلَيْهِ. He says that if a person is sad, if a Muslim is sad or depressed, he may get reward. It's possible for him to get something which is a means of reward. And that is based off of not the sadness itself, but what the sadness is based on or what it leads to. And he gives a few examples. كَالْحَزِينِ عَلَى مُصِيبَةٍ فِي دِينِهِ. It's like he who's sad and depressed for his deen. Dang. I used to fast every Monday and Thursday. I used to fast 3 days out of every month. I used to fast Ashura, Muharram, Arafah. I used to go make Hajj and Umrah every year. I used to study overseas in Egypt or Medina. Now I'm just the average 9 to 5 Muslim. I barely pick up the Quran and read it. That's a musibah. I used to pray at nighttime. Now I just sleep. I used to give sadaqah. I used to give charity. I used to wear hijab. I used to be pious and righteous. I used to have a zeal for the deen. And now it's gone. Are you sad about what you used to be spiritually? 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago? How much enthusiasm you had for the religion. I'm sad, I'm depressed. I made zina, Allah mustaan. I can't believe it, I made zina. I drunk intoxicants. I disrespected my mother and my father, now my mother is gone. I used to fight with her, I used to argue with her, I used to get smart with her. She died of cancer. She died of breast cancer. She's no longer alive. And I'm sad because I harmed myself. I wasted the opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me. كَالْحَزِينِ عَلَى مُصِيبَةٍ فِي دِينِهِ. And if you aren't sad about what you used to be and what you used to have in your religion, then know for sure your iman is suffering. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he then says, وَعَلَى مَصَائِبِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ عُمُومًا, and upon the calamity and the tragedy that has befallen the Muslims. You're not sad at the current state of affairs in the world today? You're not sad about how many Muslims have lost their lives? How many children are missing their arms and their legs? You're not sad about what's going on in the world? It doesn't bother you? It doesn't prick your conscience? Your life just continues normally, like nothing is going on, like nothing has changed? That's the type of sadness that you are allowed to have and that you should have. But unfortunately, the Muslims have become numb to the calamities that have befallen the believers in this ummah. What did we say in the invasion of Iraq? Did we stand up? Did we speak out against it? The millions of Iraqis that were bombed and blew up and systematically targeted? What Muslims protested? What Muslims made a boycott? What Muslims spoke up against it? Iraq was bombed to smithereens for 30 years. And we just said nothing about it. As if it's normal, as if it's just, another day, another page in the book. So you have to show some type of sadness to what happens to the Muslims. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he says, and if you do so, if you find sadness for that which you've lost of your religion, that which you used to be, that which you used to have, but it was taken away from you. And if you're sad upon what happens to the Muslims, then inshallah ta'ala you'll get a reward because of you loving good and because of you hating evil in your heart and things that follow that. But the sadness itself isn't a means of reward. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests you and you're patient and you return back to Him, then that is a different story. But the actual affliction itself and the sadness and the depression itself is a different discussion. The moral of the story is one. There's one point. And that is Islam has given us all of the necessary tools, all of the preventative measures, all means and ways of curing and ridding ourselves from one of the most detrimental emotions that the human being faces, and that's sadness and depression. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. As they say, 4 seasons, 4 loves. You are to appreciate everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you when you look outside. And you aren't to be ungrateful and neglectful of Allah Azza wa Jall's blessings. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla, He turns the days and He turns the times. He allows the night to turn into day and the day to turn into the night. And no matter how you look at it, there is a gift of Allah Azza wa Jalla in every single season. So seek Allah's refuge from sadness and depression. For indeed it has an effect upon your marital life. And has effect upon your business and your trade, your craft. It has an effect upon you being a neighbor and a father and a son. And do not allow the shaitan to beat you down. Do not allow the shaitan to walk upon you and to trample and stomp upon you and cause you to fall into that rut in which you just wallow it in the filth. Get out of it, even though it's difficult to get out of it. And it may hurt. And it may take a lot of energy, but you getting out of the bed, getting out of the house, getting fresh air, making salat, making wudu, guarantee it's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel better eventually. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for all of our sins. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to have mercy upon all of the Muslims who have lost their lives. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to have help, or to help the Muslims who are facing financial difficulties. We ask Allah to remove the Muslims from debt. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to help all Muslims who are incarcerated and detained behind bars. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to help the Muslims who are being persecuted around the world and to give them victory over their oppressors. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla not to make us and allow us to be cowards and scared to speak and to stand up against evil and those who perform those evil acts. Ameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamu ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.